Today, we're prepping for Chapter 1 of Icewind Dale Rime of the Frostmaiden, so let's dig in. Hey everybody, welcome to our first official session prep for the Icewind Dale Rime of the Frostmaiden. I'm really excited to get this thing going. We've got our characters already. I have read through Chapter 1. I've got a good idea and understanding of what I want. So we're going to go over Chapter 1 first, and then we'll go into our actual session prep. So I'll have timestamps for all of that in the description below if you're interested in jumping around, or if you're just here for one thing or another. Take a look there and find what you're looking for. First thing we want to do is talk about Chapter 1 and how I've prepped for it. So in our Notion page, and link for this will be in the description below, we have resources, and then under resources, I've got a campaign outline. And we talked about this a little in our last prep video. We've got an overview of the entire book and the story and how things are supposed to play out. We've got where leveling is supposed to happen. So what I've done is read through the entire book, and then I read through the current chapter I'm on in detail and make sure I take really good notes. So that's what the quick glance is. You can click on this. I've got a couple different sections here. The first is changes from the book. Human sacrifices are going to be carried out by the order of Oral and not by the speakers of 10 towns, and Sly Flourish does a really good job of explaining why he thinks this is important, and I think it's all over the place, Reddit and a whole bunch of different other places on YouTube. So we're doing this because it makes more sense for the players to want to work with the speakers if the speakers aren't doing inherently, let's call it a not good thing. So we've got this cult that kind of fills in and steps in and takes that void. One thing I thought about, but I don't think I'm going to go to as I was reading through this, having the Order of Oral be in the Care Dineval instead of the Knights of the Black Sword, but I'm going to leave that as is for now. We may swap this in with some of the player backstory instead, but that's something that I'm changing as well. These are the goals that I should be conveying to my party if we're going to continue through the storyline that the adventure has. I'm pretty loose with the actual flow of the adventure in this one. I came into it knowing that I'm going to have to do some work and kind of have to lean into the backstories of my players a little bit. So I'm going into this knowing that I'm not sticking to the book hard. The goals that my players should have is to help the people of 10 towns survive the Endless Night. Quests. So there are tons and tons of quests in Chapter 1, and what I've done is I've kind of outlined each of them. We're not going to go through these, but I've got where the quest can be found. We've got, so for example, the one that we'll be starting with is Nature Spirits. Who can give it to you? I've got a link to their NPC card for Danica Greysteel, and then what the gist of the quest is. So they need to locate and capture a Chwinga and return it back to Danica Greysteel for research. And I've got that for each of the 10 towns as I was reading through the chapter. So we've got Bremen, we've got Bryn Shander, Caer Dineval, Caer Konig, Dugan's Hole, East Haven, Goodmead, Lonelywood, Targos, and Tourmaline. And you can see there's a bunch of different quests. This is nice to know as my players finish up other quests, kind of get a quick look at these and see if I want to use one of these or if I want to homebrew something that's tailored more to my characters. So all of that is here. If you're interested, go ahead and take a look. NPCs. Holy smokes, are there a ton of them in the Chapter 1 here. Yeah, so these are NPCs you can run into anywhere. I've created an NPC card for each of them, and I've got a quick description of each of them here. So for example, Hlyn Trollbane, if I click on this, it'll take me to the NPC section. I have NPC cards. Link for these will be in the description below. I think I talked about this in my last one as well. If you want a quick place to grab everything that I have made for all of my campaigns, my adventures, the easiest way to do that is to become a patron. You get easy access to a Google Drive that's got a nice way to navigate everything, and you can find it all in one place. Otherwise, you can just go through and find the videos. Everything's free. You don't have to pay to get any of this, but the NPC cards is one example of this. So you can just grab this, and then I've got notes, I've got stat blocks, all kinds of different stuff for each of the NPCs. I've also got tags, and we'll talk about why this is important in a second for each of the NPCs. So let's go ahead and go back to a whole bunch of NPCs here. We've got listed by the 10 towns. There's a couple that can be found anywhere. Each one of these has artwork that we have created in Midjourney and then made the little NPC card for. So whole tons of them. Scroll down, you can see lots and lots and lots. Magic items, I write these down as I run into them in the book, and then I've got item cards for each of these that basically have a picture that I've generated in Midjourney or I'm using the official art, and then it's got a description of each of the items. As my players find these, I will hand them a little card that says mystery item, and then as they identify them, I can hand them the actual item. And I had before in my last campaign, I just had like little pieces of paper. I thought this would be a little bit more fun. It's a little fun for me to do these things, so these are also provided in the description below or through the Google Drive on Patreon. And as you can see, there's a whole bunch of them. We've got them all here, and then transition to the next chapter. This is also important to be consciously thinking about how to transition from one chapter to the next. So for here, we just really have to start providing the characters with more quests that reach outside of 10 towns and more into the wider area of Icewind Dale, which is pretty easy transition. So that is Chapter 1, quick glance. Now let's dive into our actual session prep. So we'll head back here, got Session 1, and every time I start these, there's this little button here you can click and it pops open a new session template, and click on this. I've already gone through and prepped all of this. I also usually provide a link to the previous session so that I can go grab it real quick if I need to copy and paste and move things over. The first step in Sly Flourish's Return of the Lazy Dungeon Master is to review the characters. So I provide a link for Sly Flourish's channel down below, and I've used this in my session prep. I've kind of tweaked it so that it works for me. But the first thing to do is to review the characters. We've got Jack, who is our Herringon Bard, who was arrested for a concert that got out of hand. We have Kama Wintersbane, who is a human sorceress that left her tribe of reindeer herders. And we've got Quark, who is our dwarf cleric, who is really wanting to be a paladin, is a little bit upset that he is a cleric instead. We've got Rory, who is our Leonin barbarian who met Kima out in the wild and they've become friends. And then we've got Tavar. I don't know a lot about Tavar yet. We're still waiting to hear back from my player who's busy in real life right now, and she'll get us more information as she has time. But Tavar is a bugbear ranger. Let's talk a little bit about the tables that we've got here. These are all things that I find useful and I have them here so that I can quick glance at these. I've got passive perception, I've got HP and AC, and then anything that they're trained in as far as skills. So anyone that's trained in religion can make this check or something. I'd have a quick glance at this. And then any languages that they speak. I have also created initiative cards that I'm going to hang on my DM screen for each of the players. So here's Jack, and then on the back I've got Jack's HP and his armor class. The picture side will show to the players, the back will show to me, and I've got that for each of the characters that I've got artwork for, and then I've got a place marker for Tavar, and then I also have some that I'll use for the monsters. They don't know what they're called, but I've got that. I'll have links for blank versions of these in the description below if you're interested in that, both with the wintry background and then one that's kind of a more generic gray. If you're interested in that, go ahead and check that out in the description below. Our strong start. So this is kind of a long-winded strong start because I want to introduce the character, so I'm taking some of the boxed text from the book and I'm converting it a little bit to match our scenario. So I'm not going to read through this entire thing, but it's basically a gist of what's happening in 10 towns. They've been cut off from the rest of the Sword Coast. They've had this long night for 2 years. They're in Bryn Shander now, and they are about to meet with Danica Greystale at the Northlook, which is an inn and tavern in Bryn Shander. So all of that there, and then what I'm going to have them do is introduce themselves, so describe who they are, maybe a little bit about themselves and what they look like, and then I am going to have Danica introduce herself. Because we're playing in person, I have these NPC cards that we've printed off. We talked about this already, but I'm going to show them this as they are talking to Danica and just say, here's what she looks like, as well as describe her. So my hope is that they'll be able to keep the NPCs straight easier as I'm showing pictures. That's the hope anyway. So in our scenes, we have got the Northlook Tavern with Danica Greystale. So here she's going to explain her theory about the Chwingas and how that they may lead to be able to understand what exactly is happening here in Icewind Dale and hopefully provide her with some insight on how to fix things. So she's going to go over all of that, and then she's going to provide the players with the Lantern of Tracking. We'll hand that out to the players, that item card, and they can decide who gets that so they can go and track down Chwingas. We're also going to let them know that there are none in Bryn Shander. She's been hanging around Bryn Shander for a long time and hasn't been able to find any, so keep checking as they go throughout the 10 towns. So this will be a quest that they do continually through Chapter 1, and we'll probably tweak it a little bit from what's in the book so that there's some interest, and they learn some things as they find this Chwinga. She's also going to talk a little bit about the sacrifices to Orl by the Order of Orl, which is led by Kethra Icefang, who is a homebrewed NPC. She is basically the leader of the Order of Orl in 10 towns and is running the cult, basically. After that, she's going to mention, if they have any questions, obviously she's going to answer those, and then she's going to say, hey, by the way, there are some dwarves at Black Iron Blades, which is a smithy and shop in town that needs some help. I'm a good friend of Garn the Hammer. We can mind go checking things out and see if you can help them. When you're done with that, come visit me at my house and we can talk more about that. So that's kind of what's going to happen at the Northlook Tavern. They're kind of first little interactions, get to know each other, role play a little bit. And then as they head out into the town, this is all in the evening now, we're going to have some ice mephits attack them. And just outside the tavern, we're going to have Tavar spot an ice mephit because Tavar has the highest passive perception. This is something that I like to do, is to lean in the passive perception. You're spending the skill points there. You might as well get some reward. The ice mephit is going to attack. We may have another one come in depending on how easily I'm handling the ice mephits. And basically the ice mephits are spies for Orl who have been sent to check in on Bryn Shander as well as Kethra to make sure things are going according to plan. Once they fight and destroy the ice mephit or two, I will have them notice off in the distance a fog cloud that's created by an ice mephit that was not in the battle, and that fog cloud is used for the ice mephit to run back to Orl and tell her what is going on. Once all that's done, we're going to start the foaming Mugs quest, and they're going to head over to Black Iron Blades where they'll run into Hruna, Korux, and Storn, who are all at the smithy basically telling Garn that the iron ingots were lost and they were attacked by Yeti. Give them the whole spiel about what happened. So they were attacked by a Yeti, they had to run by. One of the guys got ripped limb from limb. They are wanting some help to go retrieve these. So we'll make sure I've got some notes here about each of the different NPCs, who does the talking, what they're missing from Frostbite, let them know what the reward is. So we'll run a lot of this out of the book, but these are just some high level notes for me. Got gemstones as a reward, and then also Garn is going to offer them a 10% discount at the Black Iron Blades going forward, which can be useful because it's smithy, can get you tools and stuff, but also they sell adventuring gear there. Got all that. They can ask some questions and whatnot of the NPCs, and then we're going to head out, and a few miles out they're going to run into the blizzard, and that's going to last for a couple hours. They can choose to continue to press on and get lost potentially, or they can stop and hunker down for a little while until the blizzard passes. Eventually they do run into Ubok, his remains, where the sled was, but they don't see the sled. They see bits and pieces of this guy, and they also see tracks that are leading off. Any of the Yeti tracks are all gone, erased due to the blizzard, but they can roll a survival check to see that there are tracks, fresh tracks heading south that belong to about a half dozen small humanoids that were wearing snowshoes, as well as the sled. So the party will go track that for a little while, and eventually they run into the sled that they're looking for. So there's 6 goblins that are pulling the first sled. It weighs almost 1,000 pounds. And the party is 120 feet when they spot them, so they get surprised. We'll have the encounter there with the 6 goblins. Another 120 feet ahead of them is a 20-foot tall wagon that has a goblin boss in it, that's as well as 2 goblins that is being pulled by 2 polar bears. So we've got that whole encounter. I've got notes for everything here, different colors. So red is for the monsters. This is important information, more important information, and then any of the ability checks are in green. We've got that all laid out here so that I don't forget anything. And then there are some treasure in that interaction as well. Some potions of animal friendship, there's some coins, and then each of the goblins potentially holds as well. So that's kind of the foaming mugs. They'll go back, report back after all of that is taken care of. It's going to take them a while to bring the sled back as well, so we may have a random encounter on their way back. We will see how that goes. I'll kind of have to play that by ear. Maybe they'll see evidence of the white dragon, or they'll see evidence of something else. I also might have them see a body that's tied to a tree or something like that, that's a human sacrifice, and then later come back. And it's like on the way there, they may see this, and then on the way back, it might be gone, kind of hinting at the cold light walkers that are potential enemies in the future. Then I'm going to have them, when they run into Danica again, there'll be a couple of rumors. So basically, it's just like, here's the option for 3 quests. Let me know which one you guys want. So the first one is the murder in the Northlook, and this is basically the Suffolk Caltro murders is basically turning these into a murder mystery. And I found this on Reddit, so I'll provide a link for this in the description below if you're interested in that. I also have it in my campaign resources. It's here. It's the Caltro serial killer. So there's a link here for that if you're interested. So that's quest number 1 that they can have. Number 2 is the Bremen Fishers are being terrorized by a monster that lives in Mir Dwalden. So we'll have her introduce that quest. And then the 3rd is in Targos. There's a band of adventurers heading on an expedition up the side of Kelvin's Cairn, where they can potentially run into some Yetis. So I'll give them those 3 options, and then I'll have them decide where they want to go so that I can prep for my next session. And then we will have them level up because they completed a quest. Woohoo, level 2, and we will end our session there. I think that'll probably get us to the end of the session. If not, that's okay. I tend to over-prepare, so they may not get all the way here, but I expect it'll be about around here that they get to in our first session, which is great. Secrets and clues. So these can be revealed by really anybody. The book tends to say this person can tell you this information, but this is just information that's important. We've got the nature spirit quest line. I'm not going to read through all of these, but there are a bunch of different secrets and clues with information that can be revealed as we go throughout these. There's some specifically tied to the nature spirits, and then some that are tied to the foaming mugs. For example, the mines that are near Kelvin's Cairn are run by Clan Battlehammer, and they're looking for ingots with a foaming mug on them. And then here's some ideas I have for character quests for each of them. I'm waiting on some more information for some of mine, but I've got some ideas for some of the orders, including having Sir Baldwin Stoneforge, who is the paladin Quark has issues with, working for Zardox Sunblight to establish the first Durgard settlement above ground. So we can lean into that a little bit more. NPCs. So when we talked about our NPCs a little while ago in the database, I have these tags, and the reason for that is I can have this table here in my session prep, and I can filter by each section or wherever the party is. So if I go here, I filter, I have a rule for the Order of Arl and Bryn Shander. If I want to change this, like let's say I don't really care about the Order of Arl right now, I can take that off and we remove any NPCs that don't have that tag or do have that tag. So right now we're in Bryn Shander. Let's say we move to Caer Dineval. I can check Caer Dineval, remove this, and here are any NPCs that are important in the town itself. So you can see that's super nice. I've got links for all of these. I don't have the descriptions set up yet for each of these. I do this usually during my session prep as I head to a different area so that I have a quick reference for who these guys are. Let's move that back to Bryn Shander because that is useful. And I I just have links to all of these here. So that's super easy and helpful. And then I make sure that I've got the NPC cards. I made cards for all the NPCs, but I haven't printed them all. I've been printing them as I have time, and those I expect my party to run into. So I just make sure that I've got any that I think my party will run into printed and laminated. Locations, this is the same thing. I have a locations section in my database, and then I have some tags for each of those, as well as descriptions, so that I can do the exact same thing. It can filter by location. If they head from Bryn Shander to Goodmead, I can change that and know real quick places of interest real quick, so that I can be more prepared, because I've gone through this already and I have a good idea, but it's easy to forget some things. After all of that, we've got the monsters or stat blocks, and this is where I do my encounter prep, really. I use this deadly encounter benchmark. This is something that Sly Flourish has put together. It's not perfect, but it does help if you want to really challenge your players. So we have 5 level 1 characters. Divide that by 4 because they're below 4th level, and we get about 1-ish. And so our ice method, they're going to run into the CR 1/2, so 2 might be deadly. And then I've got snippets of the stat blocks so that I can have these right in front of me. It's nice and easy. I also have a section of the monsters know what they're doing. I have a link for that. And then I've also got just a highlight of what the monsters will be doing in combat. So, for example, the ice method, most beneficial thing for them to do is to use their frost breath ability, which is this, and it recharges, and fly away and continue to just kind of like kite the party around. They also can ready the dash action and a few other things. I've gone through each of the monsters that I think my party will run into, and I've prepped that here. So we've got ice mephits, we've got twingas, we have goblins, a whole bunch of those, and we've got a goblin boss, we've got the polar bear and a hawk who hangs out with the goblin boss. And then we've got treasure. So for treasure here, I will probably start tailoring this more and more to my party as we get going. But just to start things off, this is straight from the book. We've got the Lantern of Tracking, the elementals, which helps them find the twingas. We've got potions of animal friendship that can be found on the wagon, as well as some money from the wagon, and some of the goblins carry money as well. And that is pretty much it for our actual session prep. One thing I think it is worth mentioning, and I left this on here, or I put this on here so that I wouldn't forget, but I will be printing item description cards for these. I've got a bunch of them here. I've got the NPC cards that I'll do every time. Anything that's custom I'll add to D&D Beyond. I also have a 3D printer, so I have been printing and painting miniatures. So here's an ice method. I will continue to do this with each of the monsters as I have time. I'm just going to start getting real busy at work here, so that might not be a thing for every encounter. If not, we'll just use the paper minis that we've used in the past. Because I was super excited to get this thing going, I went and bought the official, the Gale Force 9 DM screen, and I had some issues with what's inside. This whole section, I don't know how well you guys can see this, but this whole section over here was basically one dungeon that they won't run into for a very long time, so I've updated that with some helpful information for me. So I've got conditions all the way over to here. I've got cover, and then I've got the schools of magic. I always forget these as people use detect magic. So I've covered that side. I've got a couple other things as well. So I've updated to the Chapter 1 quests over here instead of the Chapter 2 quests that are on it. I've added the monster research from Tasha's, and then I've got the Blizzard information here because I think that'll be useful. And I'll continue to update these as I go through the chapters. If you would like any of these, they are in the description below. You can print these out and put them on your DM screen if that's something that you're interested in. But it will be helpful for me. And that's pretty much it for our session prep. This one's kind of a longer one. As we get going, they'll get quicker and quicker. The videos typically tend to get less and less unless we jump into a full chapter like this one. But that's pretty much it. Thank you guys a ton for watching. I do appreciate it. Huge shout out my patrons. Special thanks to the new patrons. We've got Vanessa King and Daniela Donner. You guys are the best. I do appreciate it. We will catch you all in the next one.